Welcome back to the Here We Go podcast. I am your host, Trent Ging. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of the early unsung heroes of our Pittsburgh Steelers team. Some guys that maybe I don't feel like are getting quite enough love from right now. The fan base has been so focused on, obviously, Justin Fields, this wide receiver room, how well the defense has played, how well our rookie offensive linemen have played. And a lot of times there's guys that fall under the cracks who are actually playing pretty well. They're just not really being noticed. So I thought today would be a good day to kind of talk about that as we get ready. Tomorrow, Colin and I will be doing the live session again to discuss the Chargers game. Let's talk about some of the guys who are playing very well but just aren't being talked about. So number one, I know we all want the young tackles on the field. I'm one of them. I've been shouting it from the rooftops if you've been listening to the show at all. But let's be honest, Dan Moore Jr. has played like one of the best left tackles in football for the first two games. Now, of course, Denver doesn't really have the edge rushers that would threaten him in the same manner as some of the other teams that he's going to face throughout the season. Just like in the game Sunday. I mean, he's going to see either Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa, that clearly much better than what Denver had to offer. But he did face Matthew Judon already, and Matthew Judon is a very, very good edge rusher in his own right. I don't know if you're a big PFF fan or not. I'm not, but I do try to throw some stuff from PFF out there just for the people in the fan base who do follow PFF closely. As of right now, Dan Moore Jr. is slightly ahead of Penei Sewell on the PFF ratings, which is kind of shocking, to be perfectly honest with you. But he clearly has been one of the best left tackles in football. So everybody's saying, oh, Broderick Jones can't even beat out Dan Moore at left tackle this season. Like, what's going on with Broderick? Maybe Dan Moore is just playing that good. And he's a guy who was a fourth-round pick who you didn't expect to be a starter in this league, who has started for 3 seasons, and now he's in his fourth. And through 2 games, there's absolutely no reason to pull him out of the lineup. I think Dan Moore should get a lot more credit for the way he's handled this behind the scenes. I've mentioned it a couple of times on here. He's taken these 2 young tackles under his wing. He's mentored them. He's tried to teach them and pass his knowledge along, which is really admirable and commendable considering nobody thinks this guy's going to be on the team next year. They drafted these 2 guys to absolutely get him out of the lineup and no longer be a part of this team. For him to handle the situation that he has, as a young player himself, you have to commend him for what he's done. So it's not just the play on the field, but his leadership that he's shown in this offensive line room that is so young is, I think it goes further than just the play on the field here. So great job, Dan Moore Jr. I've been a huge critic of his, but this dude has handled everything with grace, maturity, and he's just coming out in the field week in and week out and doing his job. You have to like that. You have to appreciate that. So Dan Moore has got to be the first guy I talk about on this list. The second guy I'm going to talk about is actually Corliss Waitman. He's not even on the team week 1. Cam Johnston gets hurt. We bring in Waitman. He's been on the team before. And all he does is come in and just absolutely boom some punts. Averaged 53 yards per punt. And had plenty of hang time on it. So it wasn't like he's drilling some line drive shots out there. I thought he punted very well. And when we were worried about that phase of the game after Johnston goes down, I thought he came up and he shut up a lot of critics very, very quickly. And he had an offense that honestly wasn't really moving the ball in the second half. I mean, it wasn't that they weren't. I mean, they just flat didn't move the ball at all. So he became a big part of that game in Denver in flipping field position. A couple that probably could have had a little. I mean, if you really want to nitpick, I mean, he had one that hit and roll hard into the end zone. Not much anybody could do about that. And another he put a little too close to the end zone. But listen, man, he came in, he really did his job. Didn't give Denver a lot to return. Mims is actually a pretty decent punt returner in the NFL, and they really didn't give him opportunities. So I thought he did a great job. Really kind of made me feel settled in with what our punting situation is. After losing Johnston, I think we all had high hopes for. So I thought he did a great job in his own right. Another unsung guy, I talked a little bit about him last night. Listen, Larry Ogunjobi is quietly having a very good season already in week 1 and 2. He talked in the offseason about being completely healthy and that the foot feels a lot better. And I'm kind of starting to believe him because he does look like a totally different player on the field. He's got more explosiveness. He's getting into the backfield. He's got at least 1 tackle for loss, I believe, already, maybe 2. He's put some pressure on. I think Larry O looks like a different player right now. And I know we've highly criticized his contract that he signed when he came here. But this year might be the first year he actually earns the money he's getting paid. So I hope that continues because I think the better Larry O can play, the more complete this defense is. And it's already a pretty elite group as it is. So I'm happy with what I've seen in the strides that Larry Ogunjobi's made. So far, he's done a tremendous job. A tremendous job. Chris Boswell, he's a guy he's clutch. I mean, he's got to be considered one of the best kickers in all of football right now. Just the Atlanta game alone, 6 field goals, just drilling them from 50 plus. He's the highest career average from 50 plus of any kicker at this point. I mean, Boz has been the steady guy who, no matter what you do, as long as you get him within that 60-yard range, you feel like it's good. I mean, every time you don't worry. It doesn't matter what the pressure, what the situation is. Boz is just a guy that is as reliable as you could possibly get from that kicker spot. So I thought Boz has done a tremendous job. Beyond that, I think the unsung guys are going to be more the depth pieces that come in and don't give up a drop in production. And Corey Trice is a guy who looks like he's going to be that guy for the defensive side of the ball at the cornerback position. Peyton Wilson so far, rookie guy, no splash. Cullen and I talked about that out of that linebacker group so far, but there's no noticeable drop-off between Roberts coming off and Wilson coming onto the field right now. So some of those things are great pieces to have. Now, I do worry that the depth, DeMarvin Leal has completely disappeared. He's not even getting nearly as many reps. Loudermilk's had more reps so far than Leal. Leal was obviously the talk of preseason. But we're keeping these defensive guys on the field for as many plays as possible because they haven't been on the field as much, nearly as much as the last couple of years, which means the offense is at least doing their job to move the ball. So Spencer Anderson would be a guy I'm going to bring up. He's not been great. I don't think anyone's going to confuse him as being somebody who should be a full-time starter in this league. Not yet, at least. But for a 7th-round guy who has moved around quite a bit across this offensive line, I mean, they've moved him, tackle, guard. They've had him play a little center. He's played both tackles and both guards and played a little center. He's played all 5 positions at some point within the last couple of seasons. And as much as we argue and talk about Broderick Jones and should he just be left at one position, this and that, here's a guy, Spencer Amderson, that's moving everywhere and just continues to get better. So I think that's something in its own right that we have to respect and we have to appreciate, because he did have a snap at basically every position when he was at Maryland. This guy's a 7th round pick. These dudes don't even make the roster, let alone come in and start for an injured veteran. Now, I think every one of us is going to want Isaac Seumalo back in the lineup as quickly as humanly possible. But the job that Amderson has done as a 7th round pick, I don't know that you can be mad at it. I think he's done pretty well, all things considered. I'm not going to dive into like his grading and this and that, because he's a 7th round pick. Like, you shouldn't be getting any value out of this guy right now. And yet here he is. He's starting weeks 1 and 2 and likely starting week 3. Seumalo was limited in practice, but I think he's going to be treated very much like Fautanu. Like, he may be doing a little bit of work in practice, but he's not playing this week. I cannot see a situation where he plays this week. And then you've got Spencer Amderson plugged in for a 3rd straight week as a 7th round pick. I mean, it's remarkable what he's done and how well he's held up right now. I mean, it's been fantastic. So you got to love the work he's done. I would love to say that there's somebody in this wide receiver room that would fit in this conversation, but there's just not. I mean, we've got 28 yards total from Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, and no one else outside of George Pickens has a catch. So there's no one in that room that's going to be talked about this. We clearly need to make a deal at the deadline. If we continue to win, Omar Khan has got to trade for somebody as we get closer and closer to the deadline, because this room just ain't cutting it. But there is somebody in the tight end room that right now is not getting much talk, much love. But if you look at his rookie season going into the second season, Darnell Washington seems to have drastically improved in the blocking game. Now, he was a guy who was known as a blocker coming out. A lot of rookie tight ends struggle with blocking. Whether you're a blocker or a pass catcher, it doesn't matter. They all struggle because the adjustment to the NFL is just different. Tight end's one of the most difficult positions to pick up as a rookie. Darnell showed some flashes, but he really struggled as a rookie. This year, through 2 games, so put this into a microscope here because it is just 2 games, but that guy has looked like he is drastically better in the blocking game. He's clearing dudes completely out on some of these run plays and opening holes and holding his blocks. And some of the things he struggled with last year, he's not struggling with so far this year. And on top of that, he's got a couple of catches. He's on pace for almost double what he had all of last year. One of those being a red zone target and getting the touchdown on the board, his first career touchdown. You're not going to see this dude ripping through 400 and 500 yards receiving. It's just not going to happen. But as this offense continues to get better, and I do think they are getting better, I don't know if they're ready to explode the way that Arthur Smith and some of the offensive guys have talked about this week. But you can see there has been improvements. They are growing. It does take time for an offensive coordinator and, a lot of young guys on an offensive line coming in trying to gel. Like, these things take time. And you can see it's getting better. We're all just hoping it gets better a lot faster. But Darnell's a guy who right now can continue to be a part of this receiving game. It'll be a very minor role, even as the offense does get better. 1 or 2 catches a game, probably. But he's a guy who really is a great red zone target with that size. So I love what Darnell has done so far early in the year. I think he's a guy who's not getting a lot of conversation around what he's done as a blocker. The route running's still not any better. I mean, they basically just run him straight somewhere. So that part's clearly not there. But for some of the guys I've talked about, I mean, you've got to love what you've seen so far. A lot of these guys aren't getting any love. So I just want to throw out a quick episode here, real quick, just talking about some of the things that I appreciate that hasn't been talked about too much. And these guys probably, I mean, outside like Larry O, some of these guys really just aren't going to be like high-profile guys anyway, no matter what they do. But I just wanted to appreciate something, and it really started by the conversation about Dan Moore. I really thought, like, we're so interested in talking about benching this guy that I wanted to talk about the value he's brought so far this season. And I'll tell you what, his biggest test is going to be this weekend. And if he plays well again, I don't know what Broderick could do to even get on the field. You can't pull a guy playing like what Dan Moore has been playing like so far. You cannot take a guy like that out the field. It would be insane. So those are some of my unsung heroes. Just some quick appreciation type things. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have anybody that maybe I didn't mention that you think should be in the conversation. I think Arthur Smith's a guy who could be in that conversation also. The way he's called plays, the way he's adjusted to the game. I do think Tomlin's kind of holding him back a bit from letting Justin kind of come off the leash a little bit. But tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Give me comments. Give me feedback. It's Thursday. We're approaching the weekend. Hope you all have a great weekend. Tune in tomorrow with me and Colin previewing the Chargers.